Welcome to Daily Dose of Septuagint. We are back in Genesis chapter 7, picking up in the flood narrative. And as we go through chapter 7, I may not cover every verse, but we'll pick up certainly on the main highlights. So let's begin with verse 1. Ke epen kurios hotheos pros noe, selthesu, kai pas ha oikosu, esten kubotan, hoti se edon dikaion enantion mu ente genea taute. Now, if you remember back at the end of chapter 6 from a handful of videos ago, God has given Noah instructions about building this ark, and he did all of that. And so now God speaks once again to him as to what to do next. So we begin with apen. Of course, that is the third singular from Lego. We see that over and over again. And we have kurios ho theos, the Lord God. Now, I'll point out, we've seen this so many times in Genesis. It's kind of a running trend that the Greek translator often will do both Lord and God. The Masoretic text, as we have it, plus the Aramaic Targums tend to omit God, whereas the Samaritan Pentateuch actually omits Lord and only has God. And then you have some Greek manuscripts that have either Lord or God or both. So it's all kind of a big mess, but you can see some of the noise there in the transmission history. You see that quite a bit in the Pentateuch. Anyhow, we'll keep going. So the Lord God said, pros Noe, so to Noah. So here is his commandment. Aselthe is from Aser Kamai. You can see with that ending there, this is a second singular aorist active imperative. So it's a second singular. So he's speaking specifically to Noah, hence the su here. And Noah has been the main, really the federal representative, if you will, of his entire family. But now God does mention in all of your house, which we'll find out more about who they are here in a second, although we've covered it already in Genesis 6 as well. So now he says, okay, you and your house go into, and notice we have the redundant ace. We've seen that a lot. So you have the ace prefix on the compound verb and then another ace here. So enter into, if you will. It's very redundant, but that's very normal in Greek. Ten kibotan, if you remember, that is the word for ark. Kibotas there. So go into the ark. And then a very interesting explanation here. So hati, why? And then you have a se adon. Adon there, of course, is the first singular aorist active indicative from horao. Because I saw you. God has set his gaze upon Noah. And then we're going to find out what exactly God saw about Noah. He saw him as righteous. So if you look this up in some translations, given that it's actually a double accusative, you have the se here plus the dikaion, so back-to-back accusative, it's just split by the verb. You might say, I saw you as righteous, or I saw you to be righteous. You have to put something in there in English to smooth that out. Enantion mu is before me, or in my sight, something to that effect. And then ente genea taute there, in this generation. And we've seen previously that this generation is very, very bad. Everything is going wrong, but Noah has stood out. And so God is now saying, okay, because you are righteous before me among this generation, which doesn't mean Noah is perfect. He is a sinner. He'll do that later on. He has to offer sacrifices, that kind of stuff. But comparatively speaking, he is righteous before God. That's why he says, all right, you have made this ark. Take you and your family because they are coming under your protection, if you will, and go into the ark because God is going to spare him from this destruction to come, as we'll see in the coming verses. I'll point out that arguably this verse here is one of the main sources behind the narrative about Noah in the Hall of Faith in Hebrews 11. The author says this, by faith, Noah, and so we saw that at the beginning of this verse, after he was warned about what was not yet seen and motivated by godly fear, so that goes back to Genesis 6 where in verses 13 through 17, God has said, hey, look, I'm going to bring this destruction. I'm going to wipe out the world and so forth. Noah built an ark. He did what God told him to do. So we saw that at the end of chapter 6. Noah had done everything. He built the ark to deliver his family. That is his oikos, as we've seen in this verse. And then by faith, he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith. And so that's the dikaion word here, even though it is an adjective in Genesis 7:1, it's a noun here in Hebrews. This is the last use of that dikai word group in the flood narrative, and so certainly this verse is part of the field of vision of the author of Hebrews. What's interesting is that we have faith faith, and faith mentioned 3 times in Hebrews 11, because that is the running theme in Hebrews 11. It's not actually really mentioned in Genesis 7, so the author of Hebrews is essentially inferring that Noah is this man of faith who is trusting God at his word. He's obeying it. He's demonstrating his faith through his response and becomes an heir of righteousness. Now, this will come back around again once we get to the covenant promises in chapter 9. I think that's part of it as well, but here, certainly Genesis 7:1 could be part of the database, if you will, that Hebrews 11 is drawing on, reminding us really of this whole narrative that that Noah has done what God has told him to do, and now God is going to protect him from the destruction to come. So, interesting stuff kicking back off the Genesis flood narrative.